such a great letter, really succinct, thanks so much.
And then
Look at that.
And a text.
Then you'd be like,
I
that
didn't even have to, I didn't even have to
I
even
must
have to
have.
even
That's
say
what I
new,
said.
it was permanent document.
But still, then
I think
remember our
my
family,
sessions
that's
were
what
getting
we
it out as things were rolling
He
through.
called me on my
Sounds
cell phone,
such
he
that other one
called
that's
Jan
wrong.
and tracked me down. It
Lord,
was the day they
no
were going.
wonder, because seriously, I've tried to text you.
Right at the end of the session.
And then I was like, no, I think I called you
Yeah,
last time. Yeah, that's right.
It's like totally wrong.
I couldn't find a lead, that's what I was like.
What should I do?
Okay, I don't even know.
I told him.
I can always tell because
I would never.
Hold on.
I like going after Italy.
Don't put us in a position.
I gotta get something to eat.
Yeah, put some.
Because I don't think we've ate like all day.
And I'm not sure why, but the Oreos are in the staff lounge.
Whatever Jim Bolt's doing.
I know.
I mean, yeah, I am.
They're not in here, is that what you're saying?
We've got actually all.
Sorry, Lydia, I got distracted with, cell phones and Kimberly.
Thanks for taking my
Oh, I know, we were chatting.
That's all right. Oh my gosh.
Not at my best.
I'm not usually doing that.
Yeah.
Before them, but I would get at 5:30.
The other day I
I
stayed,
stay awake. And I
You didn't let me
do
finish
that,
your
and it gets-
but, I go, really? I'm like, I had something important to say and I was trying to say it. You cut me off.
And it began.
Well, no, I let her get away with like,
No, they-
70 out of 71, but it was one, I wasn't letting her.
Got right out of it.
Yeah.
She's so my baby has been my
She's like,
careless about school. Super bright, but,
Sure.
nobody wants the fourth grade, why should I put any extra effort in?
Yeah.
So he's 8th grade now, and we're still battling this, he gets just whatever the B- level
Yep.
of work is, that's what he pulls off, so. Back
I gave her a 2-minute warning already.
What? But he's doing national history.
She just went
He's putting all this extra effort in, and he's talking about, boy, I should have started this earlier, and I'm
Is
just.
there a girl involved?
I was like, pretty girl in class?
So I'm already, I'm gonna
I
send
love
it
my DJ.
email to Josh, Christie, and all the teachers, whatever you did, it's fabulous, thank you so much. And Matthew goes, must be a girl involved. Joe gets his little grin on his face.
Whatever.
Awesome.
That's all.
Thank God you got the smart one. That's what you just have to praise God for.
We gotta keep our schools co-ed, that's all.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway from it.
That's
It's a funny time to
hilarious.
enter
Not for any of that to.
None of the other equality things, because they inspire those boys.
Really, to keep them clean, right?
Yeah, I might do those benefits too.
I'm like so hungry right now, I'm like botching.
Did you have time for lunch?
No.
More regular changing of clothes,
That's
bathing.
right, that's
you
I
know,
had
and-
it.
Shower, yeah, you shower voluntarily.
In case
Yes!
anyone should think that I'm taking it all, I kind of am, but not.
Well, I know him. I know that's important. I know him well. That I feel like that's a good thing.
It's a little victories in
It
life.
is. We loved your.
I don't have boys.
When
so I
Matthew started
probably
showering, we were
won't
that.
get that quiet as bad. Me, we'll see. Who knows?
Boys, no, boys are, I've done both.
I was trying to. What year is it when they just make the switch and you don't have to remind
About
them?
8th, 9th grade.
Yeah, coming up.
Yeah, I'm hoping we may have,
Done it?
yeah. Matthew, on the other hand, there's deodorants everywhere. Everywhere I go, I'm like,
And Axe body spray?
Tired. Yes.
Axe body spray.
I just
I don't know what they
started
tell the
this
teenage
morning.
boys, but they.
Which I don't typically, I don't
But
typically.
they
I don't
are
typically-
Superman with Axe body spray.
It's the commercials. It's
It is, but it works. I mean, I don't know a teenage boy that
That age
doesn't
of
have
boys
Axe.
can get really stinky
Oh,
really fast.
Work out.
But you
Yeah,
don't want
same
to
here.
layer on the wrong.
Well, you
No,
have.
I took
Yes,
Well,
I do. But that's kind of like not, it doesn't
12
really
to
start till this
14-year-old
week. Then it
kids from Ballard,
goes
all
from this
different
week and then,
ethnicities,
yeah.
in a
We had a
van
week off and then it's like
where we
Dr.
slept
Fun,
on the
Dr. Fun,
floor
days
with Boys
in a
and
row.
Girls Clubs.
Aw.
And the
13
van
Dr.
had
Funs in 3 weeks.
fur, it was like an old 70s van that we converted.
Plus his isolation.
I did this, I mean, and they were not wearing deodorant yet because they just didn't think they needed to, and it was the
I
absolute.
switched places with you.
I just
because
felt
get
like
so
I have been put in.
claustrophobic.
I know you do.
I mean, I have done my time.
Oh, yeah, that's right, we do.
I was
that.
doing-
We are gonna start. I know.
All right,
I told Dawn, she said start.
Okay. I know you're tired. Go ahead and eat because you're also hungry. I'm going to make this quick. Okay, so not take too long. The reason I'm going to make it quick is because, like Larry said, it's going to be a long legislative session. There are a lot of opinions. I'll talk about some things in the presentation. What I wanted to start with, Larry alluded to this. Don't go after new things before you fund the things that you're already doing. And one of the key messages that our school business officials group, as well as WASA, the school administrators, put out a joint message saying that before you improve class sizes, you have got to address compensation. So this is interesting, it's a short read. If you don't read it, it won't hurt you.
It's not on the test.
It's not on the test. I know you have a lot to read. I think it's interesting. Not everybody necessarily thinks everything I think is interesting. But if you're keyed up and having difficulties following this. So we'll just set that aside and I will go through the presentation.
Hey, thanks.
We've had these.
I've got extras.
This is
Shutters. Totally is.
I've seen it
You
several
know how much
times.
soccer costs?
I do.
I've used one of the pictures you have.
Yes.
Like I said, the presentation's a little simple, not too many great graphics. We'll save those for July. And,
No dancing superintendent.
yeah, Larry, you know,
I take to a wall, Larry take to a wall.
since I am new in my position and
He's a good sport.
I like my job and so
Already suggested Larry.
Larry suggested that his head doesn't pop off or anything like that. We'll just go on the screen.
Thank you.
Okay, so I cannot believe it's 2015 already, and we're back here again. So the only data we have so far, well, actually we have a new piece of data that came out yesterday, but of course long after this presentation was put together. So last year's governor's budget was hold steady, get ready, you know, not too much happening, although some things did end up happening. This year's governor's budget is the Reinvest in Washington. And keep in mind, this is his second budget. We did not see his first budget. His first budget, you cannot have any new revenues. It has to be balanced without any new revenues, and he said it was so brutal that he wasn't going to share it. So this, sorry.
I didn't know they could do that. I didn't either.
They have to produce a balanced budget with no new revenues. Have to.
I knew they
Well-
had to do that, but I didn't know they.
Didn't have to share it?
Didn't have
I'm
to
sure
share
they
it.
have to share it with the appropriate people that they have to share it with, but I don't think they have to share it with the public. Yeah.
That's an interesting info there.
Marcy Maxwell was at, some meeting in late September, and she flat out said that the first budget that we produced will not be reflective of the governor's priorities.
Yep.
And I assume that we didn't actually see that.
Yeah,
So this is his revised budget?
so this is what they call book 2. Might be book 3 or book 4, but they usually call the governor's budget book 1, book 2, book 3.
This is after increasing revenue?
Yes.
This is what,
So this is the one he published, released on December 18th. Suggests substantial new revenues, $2.3 billion for education, and that's K through college. That's not just, or excuse me, that's preschool through college.
Okay.
Early learning through post-secondary, so all levels. The K-12 impacts of the $2.3 billion are reducing current class size funding models from somewhere around 25 to 25 students per teacher to 17 to 1 in 16, 17.
so that, he doesn't start next year?
So the budget
never
that
did.
he produces is a biennial budget, so it covers 15, 16, 16, 17, but he can structure it so that this starts this year, this starts the second year, the biennium.
But what does the, Larry, you could probably answer this for me, what does the initiative say? Does it have to start next school year?
And I will actually have that,
Oh, you're gonna have it, okay.
I'll talk a little bit about both.
I'm sorry.
So-
Go ahead.
No, it's okay,
Spoilers.
it's okay. Yeah, spoilers. So what I was trying to say is it doesn't really address Initiative 1351, except that K through 3 class size is the same for both, but his starts in 16, 17.
Okay.
Okay. Also, what Initiative 1351 doesn't have is full-day kindergarten. And they have been approaching full-day kindergarten. They've been funding, so they started by funding the highest poverty schools with full-day kindergarten. And then they're coming, through the ranks of poverty. And what I was talking to Chris about is, I think they're somewhere around 44% of the state they're funding. And this suggests that they fund 100% of the state in 16, 17. Even though we feel the effects of poverty, our first school would not, under the current plan of the staggered approach, would not get pulled in to state funding until they funded 60% of the rest of the state. And that's our poorest school.
But I don't understand. Sorry.
Okay, so what they do is they say poorest school, richest school.
Okay.
There's 295 school districts. We are gonna fund 44% of the 295 school districts by poverty. So you're the
At
poorest.
100%?
Yes.
Okay.
What the governor wants to do is fund 100% of the schools.
Because that's McCleary, right?
Yes,
It's part of,
further down the road.
part of 2776.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we wouldn't, Kenmore wouldn't, until they get to 60% funding, that would capture Kenmore Elementary.
Okay.
Most of our schools, many of our schools won't get captured until they get to the 80, 85, 90% level of poverty. Because relative to the entire state, most of our schools have low poverty levels.
So when on that timeline then, it kicks in, well, he's requesting, the governor is requesting 2016, 17, but under the current timeline, when would we hit that 85? Sounds pretty far away.
Well, under the current implementation schedule for 2776, 100% of full-day kindergarten would be funded in, I think, 2017, 18.
Okay.
And there's really no set timeline for how they have to
Do
implement.
we charge money for that then?
Yes.
We charge tuition for full-day kindergarten. We tuition a fair number of students for equity purposes, but those who can pay.
And I've got a little bit on a slide later on that topic. Okay. He said that under McCleary, materials, supplies, operating costs. So MSOCs is everything that has nothing to do with staff. Not just staff people, your regular working schedule, but substitutes and overtime and additional hours and the benefits that come with that. It's everything that's not salary or benefits or any other type of.
Insurance, utilities, curriculum.
So he says he won't fully fund
He is saying.
teachers'
Yep.
salaries.
So the material supplies operating costs are on the schedule for McCleary to be fully funded in 15, 16, and he is agreeing with that in his budget.
And then our salaries later. I'm ahead of me.
Part of this. But there's a little bit right here. So, Initiative 732 implemented a statewide COLA 12, 13 years ago. It has been frozen, suspended for 5 years now, I believe, maybe longer. 6?
6.
Okay. So it has been suspended. The law is still out there that they tie not just teachers but educators' compensation to the Seattle Consumer Price Index. So if there's, an adjustment, once a year, then our COLA would follow that same adjustment. Even though there's Seattle CPI changes for the last 6 years, the initiative's been placed on hold. So he suggests funding The COLA under initiative 732 plus an additional COLA of 1.2% next year, for a total of 3. The second year, of course, that both the 1.8 and the 1.3 are estimates because December wasn't finalized when his budget came out. But then funding the, whatever the CL Consumer Price Index COLA is the following year. Office of the State Actuary, which proposes pension rates, has suggested quite large increases for TERS, which is the teacher's pension, and SERS, which is the non-teacher pension. Predominantly not because most of the plans are underfunded, but because Plan 1, which was turned off in 1977, and has a lot of retirees, is underfunded. So they're trying to play some catch-up with Plan 1 people. Otherwise,
So he's talking about putting the money into it, not passing that through to the employees?
they do pass that through. Take me. If they say, district, you have to pay, an extra 1.76% for Lydia, they will give an extra 1.76 of $33,000. So the state provides funding for me in the amount of $33,000.
So when they collect the 1.76%, is it of that 33,000 they deemed your salary should be, or what we actually pay?
It's a total salary, actual salary.
So that's how they.
There's your little
Yeah.
trick. I
So
knew there was a
that's,
trick.
that's part of the need for compensation reform is because when you look at COLAs and you look at pensions, we have to pay based on what we actually pay people. State funds us based on the state allocation model, and those two are very, very different.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So, because this is something I don't understand as much as I should, so I know the TRI package is an issue too, so, can you just explain to me a little bit more detail? I know that it's being ignored as an impact, or is that correct?
So back in probably the late 80s, the legislature made it legal for teachers to bargain over local monies, local levy monies. And so over the years, in the absence of the state fully funding competitive or adequate salaries for employees, what's become essentially bargainable has been your local levy dollars. And so TRI stands for time, responsibility, or incentive. Those are the 3 statutory areas that teachers can bargain extra local pay. And so what's happened in recent years is that with the state not doing anything by way of compensation, when we sit down to bargain with any of our employee groups, we're essentially bargaining over local dollars.
Okay, and that's another acronym to refer to those local dollars.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And
Well, actually, LEAP has just put out a schedule that actually addresses the tri-dollars being spent statewide. So,
Quantifies it.
yeah, it has this 1 point something number attached to it. And then it also states how much actual levy money is going toward that. And then you're given a rating of how much districts are paying in TRI over and above. And I think we're ranked number 13 in the
We're
state.
somewhere in the mid-teens, yeah.
But that has recently been sent to me.
yeah.
I would take those statistics with a little bit of a grain of salt because every contract is structured a little bit differently. So what gets captured in the state data reporting of what constitutes TRI might vary a little bit from place to place, but nevertheless, we're on the higher end of TRI.
And back to Amy's point, so if a teacher is $50,000 for their base pay, their 180-day contract, the state will provide funding for the additional pension, but not for their TRI. We absorb that out of local dollars. Okay. The other problem with the governor's budget is he has great dreams for education and great dreams for transportation, and you can't afford them both.
Even with the package two that came out, even out, it doesn't add up.
Yeah. So,
Maybe if we could get that drill moving.
It's probably silted up funds like.
yeah.
Dang that bird.
Now, the thing that happened yesterday, which was really interesting, is, the Senate Republicans, correct me, legislators, voted, by simple majority voted, that any new tax has to have a 2/3 supermajority to pass.
In their chamber.
So, governor's budget relies a lot on some new taxes that may be harder,
Like the capital gains.
like the capital gains, like the carbon tax, and so they said that existing taxes, you know, you could tweak sales tax easier than you could,
Add a new, brand new one.
It only applies to brand new
Yeah.
tax streams.
Because they don't want the capital gains.
I think they just don't want any new tax streams.
and some of the Republicans feel like there's plenty of money to worry about.
All right,
Okay.
moving along.
Okay, great news after years of, you know, I told you the same thing, great news last year as well, and great news continues with mitigation efforts. That enrollment continues to grow. We have our own mitigation efforts, but at the same time, the budget cutting because of enrollment drop was more painful. We decided that we don't think the governor's gonna get his add-on COLA, because that's above and beyond the initiative and they don't have enough money, so we're talking about what Chris and I assumed to do our budget projections. We went with the regular I-732 COLA of 1.8%, 1.3 the following 2 years. We went with material supplies operating costs being fully funded, but we're not assuming inflation. There's been some talk about inflating that number. There's also been some talk about districts aren't spending what they already get, let's cut it. So we took the middle ground, okay, on our assumption. Pension increases consistent with, that's the Office of State Actuary, the governor's budget. We pretty much know what's gonna happen with our levy because it's fixed for 15, 16, 17, 18 voter authorization, except in that last calendar year, 18, we believe that extra 4% collection authority is gonna go back away. So when it went from 24.9 to 28.9, they always said in 2018 it would go back by that 4%. Not a guarantee, but that's what we're assuming right now.
Do you really think that?
I do. I don't see how in the age of McCleary, which is largely premised on the fact that local levies are paying for basic ed that the state should be paying for, how they can continue to sustain that higher local levy collection level. I don't see how they can do that.
Okay. The governor has come out with the per pupil inflator, which what that tries to do is say that your school year starts before your calendar levy year, and the inflator tries to normalize that. And not real scientific. Okay, expenditure assumptions.
So if I can just back up one, so these revenue assumptions, that's why this, you know, if we could put all of this presentation in pencil, it would all be in pencil. Because we have to make some assumptions, but the likelihood of this being close to what a final budget package looks like is highly, highly speculative.
Yeah.
So,
And just a clarifying question, I'm assuming we spend all of our MSOC money?
Yes.
I
I had Chris check that when they started burbling.
I know, I've never heard that before.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, we can go to Target.
I know.
Well, the issue is that we end up spending a lot of our MSOC money to support our salary costs. And we would probably spend more on MSOCs if we had.
But we do spend our allocation. Okay, expenditure assumptions. Plan on opening the North Shore Primary Center across the parking lot next year. Plan on opening the new high school in 17-18. We need more staff because we have growing enrollment. We also need some additional staff for large school mitigation, perhaps. some extra school assistant time or, you know, secretarial time to mitigate those large school
Assistant
impacts.
principal needs of students.
We will pass through the state COLA and honor our collective bargaining agreements. So the teachers, the NCA is in place for next year, so that's known. Nobody has suggested a change or an increase to the health benefits program, except they tweak the retiree contribution.
So that doesn't automatically go up every year?
No.
But that's so
They
easy.
set it.
I wish that
No,
was. Who sets it?
the rates, the benefit,
The costs go up.
cost goes up. The
That
money,
doesn't get
the amount
passed
of
on.
money we get from the state to fund it hasn't changed in years.
But that doesn't go up to your employees?
It gets passed on to our
Oh,
employees.
so their rates do go up every year?
But how much?
You said
I'm
no
asking about
change?
employee rates.
We get about $768 a month
Yep.
per full-time employee for
Yep.
health benefits.
And we
For
passed
some
that.
employees, if they're only covering themselves, they can come pretty close with that allocation, you know, medical,
Okay.
dental, life, all that. For other employees, that's, you know, as the rates increase, they're just paying more out of
But
pocket.
we don't
every
have to pay any extra dollars for health insurance, because we do get that from the state.
year. We don't at this point.
Except we do pay the retiree carve out.
Okay, so for our retirees, we pay for their health insurance?
Not exactly what the retiree carve out is kind of like the pension. How many employees do you have pay us $50 a month for the current, and then we will take that money and put it to the employees who are retired.
So it's, yeah, it's a weird deal. It's, the money comes to us and then we send it back to the state, and it's for all retired state employees who are not yet Medicare eligible at 65, who are buying insurance from the state plans as they can because they're retired. They get it subsidized like $150 a month, so this helps support that.
That's a pretty fair number.
It probably is, and what I've been told is the reason why, rather than just not apportioning the money to us to begin with, is because if they give it to us and then they take it back, it counts as revenue that we can then calculate in our levy base.
It's almost like Social Security. The Social Security I pay every month is not going in my little bank account for Social
Right,
Security.
right,
It's going to somebody who's already receiving it.
right.
So are we anticipating them coming back to changing the health benefits program? Is
You
that
know,
cycling back in?
we're in year 2, I believe, of the data collection process, where all districts in the state have to forward their healthcare utilization data, their plans, their costs, et cetera, to the state. And I haven't heard that they're going to take it up this year, but there's different timelines for reports. But at some point, it likely will at least be considered again whether or not all K-12 employees should go into a single purchasing group for health benefits.
It was really a robust conversation a year ago, and it's gotten awfully quiet again.
Right.
Because of everything else going on.
Right.
So, don't know. So with the increase in pension rates, that affects us, we pay that. Next year, in grades 9 through 12, they have a new, slightly new, 1,080-hour requirement, which is basically 6 periods a day, 180 days for those grades in 9 through 12. You get to average it against, or over grades 1 through 12. So the district-wide average is 1,027 starting next year, and we're currently at about 1,026.
We're really close.
So really slight set of adjustments determined by the instructional folks on how we'll meet that hourly requirement. Question?
No.
Okay. And then we just plugged in a 3% increase per year for insurance utilities, you know, it's moderately consistent with what the trends we've seen over the past.
Lydia, are we seeing savings in utilities because gas prices are low?
Since they just fell pretty recently, we haven't studied that, but that we'll definitely consider that.
Because we purchase probably, yeah. And we have a method of deciding when you're gonna purchase those and fuel, for instance.
Right, so right now, we should be getting a great benefit in fuel. If it lasts for a while, then we will see some advantages. We buy our own fuel, we fuel our own buses. Some districts do go to the, commercial, but we have the underground storage tank, which we have to purchase insurance for. Yeah.
Just, I'm remembering that we have managed the prices at some rising by purchasing more.
Early. I'll leave that up to the Connies, but yes, so, this is our initial projection, and then when we're working on the 15-16 budget, Chris will take another look at trends and patterns and what we believe for the future. So as far as fund balance, we will continue to designate $500,000 a year for the new high school startup costs and any other costs associated with grade reconfiguration, those one-time costs. Somebody keeps saying, all the signs at the junior high need to be changed. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can't say Kenmore Junior High anymore.
Can't
Yeah.
just put duct tape over.
Yeah. So people, our neighbor districts have got
We're
some,
calling them middle school.
because they're middle schools.
So their abbreviations are KGH. it's
Why
gonna
do
be
they have to go to
K.
middle school and they still can't be called a junior high?
That would be.
Junior highs have traditionally been grades 7 to 9.
But in any case, there are, costs beyond the new high school, just opening it and outfitting the new high school that we need to be cognizant of. So that's what some of those teams are working on. So our goal is to set aside $500,000 a year so that before we open up the new high school in 17-18, we'll have $2.5 million in savings to be able to use for all those one-time costs. Then finally, as our minimum fund balance policy is based on budgeted expenditures, so as budgeted expenditures go up, the minimum fund balance also needs to go up.
What will it go up? How much?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Which one
And
this
that's
is.
state required?
Nope.
No,
No, that's us required.
It's our policy.
Policy required. It's our policy.
What threshold?
But that was from what had happened in the previous budget years where you guys
It's
had been in a kind of
designated,
downturn.
it's designated by board policy.
That's what I'm saying. Was it created then?
It was amended.
It was created.
It was amended.
It was created
All districts have
long time
Because
ago.
before it said 2 to 4%
Uh-huh.
would be our balance.
Yep.
And it meant different things to different people.
So now what is it?
3.
Minimum 3.
So it was a range of 2 to 4, now it's 3.
And we never go over the 3.
And it is,
The 3, the amount over the 3 goes somewhere else.
and
I see.
that impacts our bond rating, it impacts a lot.
Yep.
Our bond loan, and we are lower than many districts in the state.
Oh, we are?
Yes. Oh, we're,
That's
We-
good or bad?
Depends on your.
depends on your perspective.
right,
So, I kind of did,
okay,
I had to flip up.
so that'll be on the
See where
second
to hurry,
slide.
Because I'm way
So
ahead of you now.